We're about to dive into a really difficult but absolutely crucial chapter of American history. For much of the 20th century, the United States government secretly ran experiments on its own people. This is the story of how that happened and how a quest for scientific knowledge hidden away in the dark turned into a massive betrayal of human rights.
And this right here, this is where it all started. This is a memo from 1947 from the Atomic Energy Commission, and it lays out the official policy in black and white. Any research on humans, classify it as secret. This one decision, this policy of secrecy, basically created a shield that allowed decades of these awful experiments to happen with zero public oversight.
So at its heart, this wasn't just about bad science. No, it was a profound violation of human rights. You had people being told they were getting medical care, that they were being helped, but in reality, they were just unwitting subjects in incredibly dangerous experiments.
And when you look at who was targeted, it's just devastating. They weren't choosing people at random. They were systematically preying on the most vulnerable people in society: children, people with mental disabilities, the poor, prisoners. People who didn't have the power or the social standing to fight back.
It gets even darker when you start looking into some of the specific research areas. One of the biggest, and frankly most terrifying, involved weaponizing disease and radiation. We're talking about everything from deliberately infecting people with diseases to secretly exposing them to radioactive fallout. The sheer scale is just staggering.
This image, it's from the Tuskegee syphilis study. It is probably the single most notorious medical experiment in all of U.S. history. And to really grasp the bigger picture of what was happening, you have to understand what went on here.
Okay, so get this. For 40 years, the U.S. Public Health Service studied what would happen if syphilis went untreated. They enrolled nearly 400 impoverished African-American men, told them they were being treated for bad blood, but they were never given a cure. Not even after 1947, when penicillin became the standard treatment that could have saved them. They were actively denied it.
And this wasn't some relic of a bygone era. The study kept going all the way until 1972. The only reason it stopped? A story was leaked to the press, and the public outcry was so massive they had no choice but to shut it down.
And if you think Tuskegee was just a one-off, it absolutely wasn't. During the atomic age, government researchers did things that are just as shocking. At one school, they fed mentally disabled kids oatmeal laced with radioactive tracers, telling them they were part of a science club. They gave pregnant women so-called vitamin drinks that contained radioactive iron, just to see how fast it would get to the fetus. It's horrifying.
And what's maybe most chilling is that the researchers, they knew exactly how horrific their work was. While they were irradiating the testicles of prisoners to study radiation's effect on reproduction, one of the scientists actually compared the experiments to what the Nazis did at the Buchenwald concentration camp. They saw the parallel, and they just kept going.
So as the Cold War really started to ramp up, a new kind of paranoia took hold in the government: fear of Soviet brainwashing. And that fear fueled a whole new wave of secret programs, this time aimed at controlling the human mind.
The CIA's answer was something called Project MKULTRA. They poured over $25 million into this thing, funding hundreds of subprojects. The goal? To find a truth serum to develop mind control techniques. They tested everything you can imagine: LSD, hypnosis, psychological torture, all on unsuspecting American citizens.
And if you want to understand the mindset of the people running these experiments, just listen to this quote from one Dr. Albert Kligman. When he arrived at Holmesburg Prison to run studies, he didn't see people. He saw acres of skin. He saw a resource to be exploited. And that level of dehumanization, well, it was critical for what came next. Yeah, that dehumanizing mindset led directly to this. Under contract with companies like Dow Chemical, that same doctor injected prisoners with dioxin, a toxic part of Agent Orange, just to see what it would do to their skin. The men developed these agonizing sores and were just left to suffer for months without treatment.
So how did all of this finally come to an end? Well, these secrets didn't come out all at once. It was a slow, painful process of press leaks and government investigations that finally dragged everything out into the light.
It really all started with that Tuskegee leak in '72. That was the first domino. It sent a shockwave through the government, and the very next year, the CIA director actually ordered all the MKUltra files to be destroyed. But it was too late. By 1975, congressional hearings like the Church Committee exposed the mind control programs to the public.
Still, it took almost 20 more years until 1994 for a presidential committee to finally dig into the full, terrifying scope of all those human radiation experiments.
Now, it is so important to understand that the ethical rules we kind of take for granted in medicine today, they were born directly from these scandals. They are a direct response to all of this abuse.
You can see the shift pretty clearly. Before, everything was built on secrecy and deception. Now, we demand transparency. Before, consent was just assumed. Now we have the principle of informed consent. And to protect vulnerable people, we created what are called institutional review boards, or IRBs, to oversee any research on humans.
And out of everything that changed, the single most important legacy is informed consent. It's a really simple but powerful idea. You have the right to know exactly what is being done to your body, to understand all the risks, and to voluntarily say yes or no. It is the absolute bedrock of ethical medical research today.
You know, looking back on this history isn't just about pointing fingers at the past. It's about being constantly vigilant, right now. It forces us to ask this really heavy question. How do we make sure that our search for knowledge, for security, never, ever again comes at the cost of our basic humanity?